before we get in this episode, can you do us a favor? Will you go ahead and subscribe to the channel?
Will you ring that notification bell?
And if you would, give this video a like. Well, enough of that mumbo jumbo. Let's get to the episode.
Let's talk developmentally speaking, glow up, and connecting through wrestling.
Everybody, I'm Morty.
And I'm Brian.
And on today's episode of Connecting Through Wrestling, we have Dutch himself, Bill Carr. Bill, how's it going?
Oh, not too bad. How about you guys?
Well, just had a good Christmas, had a good time, got lots of good presents, gave out lots of good presents,
Oh, there you go. That's always good.
Sure.
I didn't get shit.
Had spent some good family time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I got a nice robe and some flippers that's slowly, I'm finally becoming Tony Soprano, which is an ultimate goal of mine here. So.
There you go. Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. Well, I'm going to start this interview the way I start every interview by asking you probably the simplest question you've ever heard, and you've probably been asked it millions of times.
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to get into professional wrestling?
Oh, let's see. My first thing I ever saw in professional wrestling, I was young. I don't remember the year, but my aunt had taped Saturday night's main event for me, and just put that on repeat every time. Just every time I was there, and it was the episode where the Mega Powers explode. And that was my introduction to wrestling, and from there on out, that's what made me want to become a professional wrestler.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
baby boy.
oh yeah, and what a good time to start, to get hooked.
Oh yeah.
The implosion.
Oh yeah.
So where did you start your wrestling career, your journey, if you will?
So I started wrestling in the third grade. And then wrestled all through middle school and high school. And my senior year in high school, we would come in, and the modified team would just be finishing up practice. So as I was coming in and modified was leaving one day, I recognized one of the kids that wrestled on modified. Their dad was Tony DeVito from ECW. And I recognized him. So started talking to him then, and became friends with him, and he pretty much told me, he's like, once I graduate high school, if I want to start training with him, I can. And we had a ring in a backyard in upstate New York, and that's where it started. We could only do it during decent days, and while I was home for like the summers and stuff. So really from like 2005 to 2007, I'd say, just kind of during the summers, we'd be able to train. And I think November of 07 or November of 08, I don't remember which one was when I had my first match. This is some 8-man tag before a small show in Connecticut somewhere, and I don't remember anybody that was in the match. So I think I was wearing a Adidas shorts and a cut-off Avenged Sevenfold T-shirt. So
That's your standard,
All right.
first couple match gear.
oh yeah.
Yeah, so you look like full-fledged wrestlers in the Indiana independent scene. Oh, that's definitely a bash on myself. No, I've always with my character, I've always dressed with like a fedora and dress shirt and stuff like that. I have to look as cringe as possible. Man, for sure. So, go ahead, Brian.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
Right. So starting out, you only trained during the summers. So was that difficult? Because you would go all summer training and then stop and kind of go in hibernation mode from wrestling because you weren't able to be out in the ring. So doing it only on summers, did you feel like when you got back to the next summer, you had to start all over again, or was it like riding a bicycle?
Well, so while I was training, I went to school maybe an hour north of where we were training, and the guy that had the ring, he left it up until it was like absolutely too cold to wrestle. So every weekend I'd drive back down, and we would just, go roll around and wrestle every weekend until probably like right around this time where it was getting like okay, we're outside for 5 minutes and we can't feel anything anymore. So
Right.
and probably start back up like around St. Patrick's Day time, like mid March, where it was still cold but starting to get a little warmer. So it was really only like 3 months we would take off, and it was pretty consistent. Going there every weekend. I mean, we didn't have we weren't under a watchful eye, I
Right.
guess. So we were kind of just having fun and like doing whatever. But once the weather started getting nicer, and I was home for the summers from May until August, it was pretty much 3 days a week getting over there and getting the crap kicked out of me. So
Yeah. Because there's not much worse than bumping on a stiff, cold ring. That
oh yeah,
so yeah, so you definitely got toughened up pretty fast doing that
oh
because
yeah,
yeah, it's horrible. Or I remember one time we did a show, um, and it rained at the beginning, and it was an outdoor show, so we waited till it stopped raining. It only rained but it was like a downpour for a good 20 minutes.
yeah.
And afterwards, we got all these towels out, toweled down the ring. Asked all the boys in the back, "Hey, you got any towels in your bags? So we got to get." So they go out there and towel dry the ring, but the water had soaked enough through that the padding, the inch worth of padding that you may have,
Yeah.
was just completely saturated. So it was just like bumping on concrete. Just it
Oh,
was
that's great.
yeah, it was rough. But so yeah, I'm sure you toughened up pretty fast. You
Oh yeah.
definitely was getting your ring calluses pretty quick.
Oh, absolutely,
So,
absolutely. I remember well, the first 3 months, my back was just black and blued for months, just from running the ropes. Because he taught us. He's like, you gotta hit it from the side. At least when you're with me, you hit it from the side just in case the top rope breaks, and you could kind of catch yourself if you fall over, rather than hitting it with your back and tumble right over on your head, which is I go back and forth depending on how tender my ribs feel. So
Right. Hitting it from the side is definitely a more old school approach
oh
because now that they teach you to hit it flat back with your arm over, so in case it breaks, you still have the rope in your hand.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know if I could hit it from the side, man. Like I got some cushion, but God, that would hurt.
Oh yeah, no, it does, especially like the steel cable ropes. Those hurt. But like, you know what? It's weird because I did that for so long training, and once I felt like I was like, all right, I'm comfortable hitting it with my back. I was like, you know what? I still think I'm gonna hit it with my side, just because that's how I was taught, and that's how I was trained, or doing it for so long, And luckily, so far, I've had no top ropes break on me while running the ropes. There's things have broken other ways, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, no, it's still painful. It still hurts,
oh yeah.
So yeah.
So did you early on? Did you just stay in the Northeast, or did you travel outside of that?
Early on, it was kind of just whatever I can get that was local. I mean, I was in school, so I didn't really have a lot of money to put in my car and drive all over the place. So it was just as far as I was able to get. So like Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island. There was nothing really in upstate New York. It was all down like the city area down there. But yeah, it was only I'd say I was only wrestling for, let's see, I started consistently like on a weekly basis, like toward the end, like the middle to end of 2009 into the beginning of 2010, and then right in the beginning of 2010, I got offered a developmental contract for WWE. So it was kind of fast that all that happened. So I never really had gotten the experience that I wanted to on the
Mm-hmm.
independents. I was always a fan of the indies. like once I found Ring of Honor, like actually once TNA started having those weekly pay per views, I was watching those every week, and I was that was when I was like, okay, there's more out here than WWE because there really was not any independence in my area ever. So I had really no idea what that was. You know, there was no uh, like the internet wasn't really a
Mm-hmm.
thing at the time. So once I found TNA, and I was like, oh my god, like this is
Mm-hmm.
there's some crazy stuff out there, which then introduced me to Ring of Honor, and saw my first Ring of Honor show in 2002. It was the first Death Before Dishonor, and like I mentioned before, how watching the Mega Powers explode, that's what got me into wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, that's always what I wanted to do. But once I saw that first Ring of Honor show, that's when I was like, okay, you know what? This is really what I want to do. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I was probably 15, 16 at the time, you know, so, and I always wanted to get that experience on the independents. You know, I mean, in my head, um, you know, I never even thought that I would even have an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
get a look by WWE
Right.
at that time. So it was everything happened so fast, you know.
How did it come about?
So they were offering a tryout down at OVW
Okay.
for $100, and all you had to do was get yourself there and get yourself a hotel. So I was like, yeah, you know what? It's $100. I'll do this just so they have me in their system,
Hmm.
and so I can start getting extra work because I had no idea how to get extra work at the time. Um, so I skipped my midterms actually to go do this tryout.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it was like an all or nothing shot right there. And got there, and there was I don't know, had to be 100 people there, maybe more.
Probably. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, there's no way, you know. I mean, there were so many people there that you couldn't show like you couldn't show them any of your talents really.
Yeah.
And I remember they split us up into four groups. Um, Group one was just doing drills, in ring drills for 45 minutes. But again, there was so many people there that I think I did a few rolls, ran the ropes, and did like two or three drop downs. So there really wasn't, you know, it was. I mean, that was great for me
Yeah.
because it didn't blow me up or anything. And then after that, it was 45 minutes of chain wrestling on the outside, like around the ring area. And DeVito always said he hated chain wrestling, so he never wanted to teach us anything. So it is the basics, you know, arm wringer, top wrist lock, headlock. That's pretty much it. So that's all that I knew at the time. But I also knew how to nip up. So they had these cameras going around filming the whole thing. So whenever that camera got around to me, whoever I was paired up with, I was like, all right, let me take over real quick and, you know, get me in the top wrist lock. I'd roll through and then nip up and reverse it every time the camera came around. So that's all I did. And then after that was we just go watch film for 45 minutes. And then we did a 1 minute promo. And then day two was they split everybody up into teams of four. So we had an 8-man tag. And when we were in there, we got 30 seconds to show what we could do as a heel and 30 seconds to show what we could do as a face. So again, it's like what are they seeing in
Yeah.
anybody here? There's
Hmm.
really
So
there's really
congested.
nothing. Yeah. And I actually had to leave early because I booked my flight wrong and it was too early. So I had my match, I got dressed real quick, and I'm like, man, I really don't think I'm going to be getting a deal right now anyway. So it is what it is. But as I was leaving, John Laurinaitis was standing there, and I introduced myself to him. I said, thank you for the opportunity. So sorry, I screwed up my flight. I have a flight to catch, and he's like, oh no, no, no worries, no worries. So left, and then didn't hear anything for like a month, which I assumed. And um, Raw was going to be in Albany, New York, in say like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I get a phone call from WWE, and I was just assuming, okay, they're calling me for extra work because I know that WWE is going to be in town in a few weeks. And they're like, oh no, we want to offer you a 3-year contract. I'm like, what? Huh?
Oh man.
Yeah, so that kind of blew me away. And again, everything happened so fast that it was yeah, it was just crazy.
Oh yeah. So you get signed and then you go. Will you report down to FCW?
Yep.
So how was
Yep.
that experience?
Oh, I loved it. It was great. Um, but it was like they say it was like the Wild West
Mm-hmm.
down there, and it was fun. We all had our fun, and it's funny because John Moxley just put out his autobiography last year, and I was super pumped to read it just to see what FCW stories he had put in there. And one of the first things he says is like, "I'm not talking about FCW because it's possible it will incriminate some people." So I was like, damn. I'm like, all right, well, I get it. But yeah, no, it was a great experience. It was, I mean, intimidating as hell. Again, here I am, not really knowing much about the business. I had maybe 20 matches under my belt at the time, zero indie experience really, and here I am walking into the WWE Developmental Center. And I remember walking the doors and just seeing everybody. I'm like, oh my god, like this is nerve wracking. And I actually started the same day as Roman Reigns. We started the same time together. So, you know, and he didn't know anybody either. So we are like, all right, like let's just kind of link up and just stick together with this.
Mhm.
And I remember him telling me he was always nervous about getting fired. I'm like, you're never, you're never getting fired. Like, you're good. You're good. And he's like, oh, no, no, no. I just have a feeling. And now look at him. So,
So you've literally been in Oos since day one.
day one.
Day
Since
one.
day one.
Yeah. So everybody else's shirts are lies. Yours is
Exactly.
got it. Figured it out.
I got to go to some of those FCW shows. I moved down to Tampa in 2012, so it was a little later.
Okay.
And it was very. So I grew up around OVW,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go to FCW, and there were some similarities, but they were really two completely different, like way that were ran. I feel or presented, and so I got to see some of those developmental days down in Tampa, and I think they would. It seemed like they would go through character after character. Like they would give you like. I remember Leo Kruger would just change all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Try all these gimmicks, and it just seems like the FCW did that a lot just to see what would stick.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes, they
So,
did. They,
I remember-
with mine, they said, they were like, all right, we know you can do this. Like, let's see what you can do. Because I
Mhm.
was getting fed ideas, emails every week of telling me exactly, okay, we want you to do this, we want you to do this, we want you to do this, dye your hair like this, wear trunks, put on a vest, all this and that. So I did. And then they come down and they're like, all right, we know you can do this, keep this in the back pocket. Let's see what you can do on your own. So it's like, all right, cool. And then a week later I get fired. So so I didn't really get an opportunity to show what I could do on my own, I guess.
What did you do? So you get released, and then what was your next step? Were you down about it? Were you excited because you got to pursue other opportunities?
Yeah, it was a weird mix because yeah, I was upset, but I was also excited to pursue an indie career,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I moved back up north maybe a month or so after I had gotten released, and just started right from there. Every I would anybody that would book me, I would show up, just say, hey, if there's a spot, I don't care about money right now. I just want to get my name back out there because when I got the call, they said they're like, go get, we want you to get experience, in a year, call us back in a year, and we'll see what we can do from there. Sure, I called back in a year and no answer. So, but I've done, I was able to get extra work and stuff
Hmm.
after that and stuff like that. But yeah, I was really excited to work on the indies, and it had a pretty decent career doing that, over like a 6 or 7 year course. So
Hmm. So, what was the next step? Was it Ring of Honor? Was that the next big step for you?
so Ring of Honor at that time, they were I think they already had the HD Net deal
Hmm.
beforehand. So at this time, I think that it was more, you know, New Japan collaborations and stuff like that. So I knew it was going to be a lot harder for me to get in there with the experience that I had. Because I mean, when I got released, I still couldn't really figure it out. Because I got released, and the idea that I still had was like, oh, they want to see me as this, big, tough cowboy
Hmm.
gimmick. So I'm like, oh, like let me just keep doing this then. And it wasn't until I met, well, I had met Dan Barry, my old tag partner,
Hmm.
um, prior to getting signed. So when I got released, he was the first person I called and go to shows together with him. But again, I was still trying to do the big tough guy thing, and I think he had like a Halloween party or something. He dressed up like Tom Selleck from Magnum PI, and he comes back, and we were booked on. We were tagging at the time. We were booked on this show by this company called Interspecies Wrestling, which is that very like outlandish gimmicks and costumes and everything. So he's like, "Why don't we try like a buddy cop gimmick?" So I'm like, I don't know if I want to do the comedy stuff right now. I'm still
Hmm.
trying to like. This is what they want me to be, so this is what I want them to see, pretty much. And he convinced me, and we walked out and had the match, and the reaction we got from the crowd was like, you know what? Let's stick with this. And and we did, and we were able to get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. Um, and we pretty much worked for every major independent company there was at the time, all over the country. Went over to Progress, OTT, um, PWG. We do, yeah, we did a ton, and at that point, I think Ring of Honor was not really an indie anymore.
Yeah.
So again, it was a lot harder to get into, and I mean, it took me, let's see, it took me almost 10 years, I guess, to get into Ring of Honor after getting released from WWE.
Wow.
So
See, I used to work for Evolve on the production team and Dragon Gate, and all, so I'm used to those East and West Coast crowds, and I love those fans. I love
oh yeah.
it's something completely different, and I feel like you can really evolve your character and try new things and get reactions. I love like the East and West Coast wrestling scene. I always
Oh,
have.
absolutely.
It's where you can really grow. I feel.
Oh, 100%. And even with Evolve too, like we never even thought that we would be considered for Evolve because
Hmm.
we are characters, and Evolve was very wrestling based at the time.
Hmm.
And then when Gabe called us to come have like a little tryout, I was like, really? Okay,
Hmm.
yeah, let's go do it. And then he loved us, and then put us right in that tag title tournament and
Hmm.
everything, and we wound up. Um, don't quote me on this, but I think it was one of, if not the only time when we had our Evolved Tag Title match against Johnny Gargano and Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre was the Impact champion at the time,
Okay.
and Johnny Gargano, I think, had just signed a WWE contract, and they were the Evolve Tag Champions.
Mm-hmm.
So I could be wrong, but I think it might have been the only time that there was an Impact contracted wrestler teaming with a WWE contracted wrestler holding independent wrestling titles, wrestling two independent wrestlers.
Wow.
And it's funny that match that we had. You always have that dream that
Mm-hmm.
your music hits and you look down and you're forgetting something. Your
Mm-hmm.
boots, whatever. We are 5 minutes from going out, and I am like, my pants aren't here. I can't find my pants. So Chris Hero was sitting down, and we're similar height and size and everything, and he was wearing black Adidas sweatpants. I'm like, Chris, you you got to give me your pants. So he's like, yeah, absolutely. Dropped trowel right there, gave me his pants, and I walked right out. And biggest match of my career at that time, and here I am wearing Adidas sweatpants. The funny thing was, though, I go to my car after the show's over, 3 pairs of pants sitting in my back seat. I'm like,
Oh
you gotta be
man.
kidding me.
Oh Lord.
So, how did you get into Ring of Honor?
So I've known Vinny Marseglia for Vincent
Mm-hmm.
for a few years. I was never really too close with him, but we share common interest in horror movies, and we went to a horror convention down in Philadelphia and spent the weekend together. And we kind of realized, like, oh, okay, we have the same brain when it comes to wrestling and love for horror movies and everything. So he was at the time he was just starting to get out of the role in the Kingdom
Mm-hmm.
and start to go on his own. Um, and he wanted to bring me in right off the bat, and we had an idea where I think at first we were like, oh yeah, this would be a great idea. I'll dress up like Leatherface, but in his like women's clothes and come in like that. And like we thought it was a great idea. And then he texted Delirious at the time, and he never got a response. But then we like talk about that now, and we're like, that was a terrible idea. Like, why did we even pitch that in the first place?
Oh.
So he wanted to bring me in right away, and it just wasn't working out with my actual like day job and everything because they were traveling every week and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and there wasn't a way for me to like kind of pull that off at the time. The money wasn't, I was making more money doing my day job, so it's like I can't right now. Um, but once COVID hit and they started doing the tapings like every 2 months, they were like, "Oh, I could absolutely do this."
Mm-hmm.
So we figured out a character and a way to introduce me. So it took about a year to get the ball rolling and everything. Because you know what? No, it was going to happen. Um, Final Battle 2019. That's when it was going to happen, but things just didn't work out. So we were going to push it back to a few months later, and then COVID hit. So everything shut down, and then I think they started rolling back around August of 2020, and then again I was supposed to debut Final Battle of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a few last minute switches where they were like, you know what, we're going to go with this direction. Let's hold off. We could either debut you at the next TV taping, or we could hold you off until the 19th anniversary show. So I'm like, of course I'm gonna do the 19th anniversary show. Like, way more people are gonna be watching that than
Mm-hmm.
a show that's streaming on a streaming site.
Mm-hmm.
So we waited until then, and it worked out. Got a good amount of buzz behind that, and everything was going good. The ball was rolling, and then we get a call that they are closing down. So it was like, oh, perfect, great, this is wonderful.
Right.
And yeah, like we were just starting to like find ourselves and feel
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with what we were doing and everything.
Hmm.
And we had this whole like year-long feud planned out with Jay Lethal because Jay was a big fan of us, and he it was his idea,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
he was actually going to. It was supposed to be Vinny and Jay at Final Battle last year, where if Vinny wins, Jay has to join the Righteous, and I forgot what the other stipulation was. But he was supposed to join, and the whole idea was have Jay join to help Vinny get to the world title, kind of coach him along to get to the world title. And Jay, reluctant at first, um, but then toward the middle of this feud, he kind of realizes like, I know how to. This guy knows how to get into my head, but I've taught him so much now and how to get to this position. I can now get into his head. So the whole idea was to have Jay teach Vinny to get to that world title and have him help him win the world title, and then Jay pretty much immediately take that title back because he knows how to get into his head at this time.
right.
But we were going to do a whole thing where we were going to get the like Jay, Bateman, and myself were going to be the 6-man tag
Mm-hmm.
champions. So it would have been this whole
Oh yeah.
the thing we had written down, it was like a year long,
That's a
and
big angle. Yeah.
yeah, and it didn't pan out at all. So well, it started to. It
Yeah.
started to. I think we had one we had one match with the foundation
Mm-hmm.
for one of the TV tapings last year, and that's when everything was going to start rolling. We had filmed so much stuff that will probably never be seen, and it was all just like gold with Jay.
Mm-hmm.
He's so good. He's one of the most well-rounded wrestlers I've ever been around, and he's just got a great mind for this. And it was great that he really really wanted to help us succeed.
Oh
That's
yeah.
not the first time I've heard that. I've heard that about Jay Lethal. Anytime anybody talks about him, they say he's a great guy, has a great mind, just one of the best.
Yeah,
For sure.
What's next for Dutch?
that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. We are the crappy thing is the three of us live different sides of the country. I live in New York. Vinny is in Florida. Bateman is in California. So it's
As far as
hard.
you can go, really.
Yeah. So it's hard for us to be in one place at one time, especially with promotions. It's hard to
Mm-hmm.
convince a promoter, hey, we're a trio, and you have to fly all three of us out. Like that's an expensive flight
Mm-hmm.
for all of us, and then to pay us on top of that. So I completely understand why that's not happening, but I have some ideas and gonna start producing some stuff very soon, and then probably the next week that I'll probably start putting out on social media. So it's the idea that I have is pretty fun. I hope you'll
Good.
see.
I'm
You'll see.
looking forward to that.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
So, if you had any bit of advice to give to anybody that is wanting to get into the world of professional wrestling, what would it be?
I mean, it's probably the most overused advice ever, but it's the truth. If you have a dream, follow it because you want to live with little to no regrets,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if your dream is to become a professional wrestler, you try your hardest until you realize that, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. At least I gave it a shot. But if you are very passionate about professional wrestling, then I suggest that you give it a shot. And I saw that a lot with a lot of the guys in developmental. I
Mm-hmm.
am a true believer that you need to love professional wrestling to succeed in this business. Because I saw too many athletes who got hired were given, taking somebody's spot, somebody who wants that spot, they're taking it from them.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 months, a year, 2 years, they're just not getting it,
Mhm.
and then that's 2 years wasted there. But yeah, I mean, you want to wrestle, absolutely, just go follow your dream because you're on your deathbed. You don't want to be laying there with any regrets. You know.
I couldn't
Absolutely.
agree more. Well, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's been a pleasure. It was nice
Thanks for
meeting
having
you,
me.
and we should do this sometime again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love it.
Looking forward to seeing what's next for Dutch.
Oh yeah, we'll see. We'll
Thank you
see.
so much.
You got it.
Thank you. Have a good one, sir.
Hey, you too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's Morty,
It's Brian.
and thank you for watching today's episode of Developmentally Speaking.
If you could, please click that subscribe button.
And don't forget to punch that bell icon so you can get notified whenever we go live or drop a new video every Monday. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next
Developmentally speaking.